businesses need a platform that allows people to access and manage their office workstation from anywhere and anytime. WebConnect does just that. Our browser-based desktop platform enables you to seamlessly migrate your office into a private cloud, giving you total control of your desktop, files, and important data. It's encrypted end-to-end connection, making it totally secure and ensuring peace of mind for users and administrators alike. Put WebConnect to the test and transform the way you work remotely.
Hi everybody, this is Crypto Rich, working with you to get rich with crypto, filling our pockets with crypto profits. I am delighted to be joined by Jim Ferguson.
We are now live.
Oh, that was
started 26 seconds ago.
I still haven't mastered this. So I've turned the volume down on that right now. Let me see. What are we going to talk about? So I've been watching your Twitter feed. Actually, before I get into that, please subscribe, follow me on Twitter, CryptoRichYT. Join my official Telegram announcements channel. I don't even know if I'm going to edit any of this at all. It might just go up. So please also support my work and support yourself by getting yourself a VPN so that your data is encrypted going in and out of your computers, and also it works on a mobile phone. You use my affiliate link, nordvpn.com/cryptorich, and you get 2/3 off, and you can use it on up to 6 devices, which can be very useful for an entire household. Okay. Hey, Jim, thank you so much for making yourself available. You have been on a few times before, and this time it has been such a crazy, crazy week. Such a crazy, and I think dangerous week as well. And you have done quite a lot of coverage about what's happening in France. So do you want to say a bit about that? Should we start with that? And one of the things I'm curious about is I get the sense from following you on Twitter, and I have the links in the description below, is that you have a lot of contacts in France.
Yes, well, thanks very much indeed for having me on your show again, Rich. I do appreciate it being here. I've always enjoyed coming in and having a chat with you about things. Historically, members of my family fought with the French resistance during World War II. Oh, wow. And one of them, obviously, a few years ago now, was awarded the Legion d'Honneur, which is the highest award that anyone can receive for helping the French people and the French state. So, one of them was he worked with what's called the Auxiliary Service, which was a highly secretive organisation in London, and was dropped in on his own behind enemy lines at night, and worked with the French resistance just before, or a little bit before, the Normandy landings. So, so historically, we have an interest in France. We have an interest in the French people, and I know that sometimes they get criticised for things like the Maginot Line and other things that happen. But there were and are some incredibly brave and heroic people in France who resisted the Nazi occupation back in World War II, and so we have a correlation and a connection to them. Right.
Okay. All right. Would you want to just comment on why do you think what's happening is happening in France, and how do you see it rolling out?
Well, France has been under the leadership of Emmanuel Macron for a number of years now. And he, of course, came from a banking background. He was with the Rothschilds Bank. And he came really out of nowhere, and he created a party and won the election. And but what we've seen happening in France over the last few years, the last 3 years in particular, but also a little bit before then, was a great disconnect between his presidency and the people themselves. And we saw the rise of the Gilets jaunes, which is the yellow jackets or the yellow vests that we've seen protesting. Before what happened in France last weekend, it was sort of the pension reforms that they were upset about. And before that, there was a long period of time when the Gilets jaunes were protesting about unfair working conditions. There was a raft of issues that were really problematic for them. But there seemed to be no willingness on the part of the Macron government to listen to them or to try to help them. And this has been festering over a period of time now. But the biggest problem has been the lax immigration rules. And many people from various parts of Africa along the coast have been going into France in significant numbers. And of course, they've not been particularly well treated or looked after either in many ways. But I think it's important to point out that the scenes that we saw last weekend In fact, I was getting reports because I have contacts and friends in France, and I on the Friday lunchtime started to get information coming in that there was something different about this. There was something really quite strange about it. Very, very violent. The violence was off the charts, and even compared to the full-scale riots in 2005, the violence was significantly higher. So we knew that something bad was happening.
Yes, yes, and I get that sense as well. I don't have my ear to the ground like you, with any contacts in France, but just looking through, I'm like, this is different. This is very, very different. It is an escalation, and it's still going on, as far as I can tell. But there's been a sort of censorship about it, a shutdown. And I know one of the things that the French government are out to do is to censor any stories about this coming out. But it hasn't made a difference to the protests. I mean, what do you say, given that we're recording this on Friday, the 7th of July? How is the situation currently from your read?
It's difficult. They have indeed been censoring. They passed Article 3 in the French Parliament, which has given the state authority to activate people's mobile phones without their permission, to listen on calls, and to also activate things like cameras in your mobile devices. Or if you're using something like a desktop, that you might have a camera mounted on top of that. They now have the ability and the legal authority to monitor that. And the social media has been heavily restricted. Even emails were difficult to get in and out of France. And so the people that want to get the news out, they want the world to see what's going on, are in fact being heavily censored at this point. And it is quite hard to get any kind of meaningful images over the last 3 or 4 days since they did that. And people are concerned that they are being limited and the internet is being limited. So even just trying to get news of what other people are saying outside of France for French people at the moment is really very difficult. And it's quite concerning that we can't see clearly what's going on there at this point in time.
Right. And I suppose the government would argue, and those that support the government's line or want an end to this violence will say, okay, you've got to do that in order to crack down on protesters and rioters. But the danger is it gives the government cover for any heinous acts that they might commit, because the world isn't watching. I mean, I remember watching the Gilets Jaunes protests and just the horrific injuries that people sustained at the hands of the police.
Yeah, I mean, the ordinary French people themselves are caught in the middle of two very violent groups at this point in time. So the ordinary French citizens, they're not wanting this. They just want to live in peace. And what's happened is most of the illegal migrants after the shooting basically started to riot, and they were incredibly violent to French citizens. So the French people are kind of caught between them, but they're also caught between Macron's security services. And it's not just the police, as in the UK we might know the police. We know that there are different divisions of police and specialised police units, like riot police, for example, if I want to explain it in lay terms. But there are specialist policing units that are highly militarised in France. The IGN is one. The RAID is the other, or RAID, R-A-I-D as they're called, and they are extremely violent. And I've seen horrific injuries over the last few days coming out of France, things that you couldn't put them on Twitter, or you just couldn't. They were really, really graphic. I certainly couldn't anyway. Maybe some people could. But in the previous periods of time, once again, you're correct, the Gilets Jaunes were being seriously injured. People were losing their eyes, their fingers, their hands were being blown off with these devices that they were using for crowd control, and exploding munitions, and of course rubber bullets, or whatever they call them in France. I don't know if that's the correct terminology that they use, but the anti-riot, so-called non-lethal rounds, baton rounds, or bean bags that they're using. But some of these weapons, because that's really what they are, cause horrific injuries and can cause people to lose their lives, and people have died as a result.
Yes, And I think before we started recording, I sent you a clip from Richard Medhurst's channel in Odyssey that a 27-year-old was killed by a metal ball wrapped in rubber or something, shot by the police, and he wasn't involved in protesting or anything. They shot him in the chest, and it's supposed to be non-lethal, and it killed him. And the government don't want the information about that getting out, but it is getting out, and people are finding out about it, and that's just going to enrage people. And also another person on the border with Luxembourg knocked into a coma by a bean bag or something, shot by the police. Okay. Yeah. Now, where is this going?
Well, there have been unconfirmed reports and chatter, and you have to be very careful when you're getting things sort of second or third hand about what is maybe happening. And it's always important when you're reporting these things, unless you have absolute certainty or some kind of statement of what you're saying, you've got to be very careful. But there have been some reports that the French military were deeply concerned about what Macron has been doing. And this does kind of tie into what the BBC and others reported a few months ago, when the military sent an open letter, and these weren't retired military, these were serving officers as well, warning the Macron government and basically putting him on notice that he needed to change tack, or there could be consequences. So there has been unconfirmed reports that the military are once again deeply concerned. I haven't been able to get any further confirmation for or against that position over the last few days, because it's gone dark in France primarily. So as we go into this weekend, I think we are going to be watching incredibly closely what the situation is, because it could be that there is another escalation or further development in and around the things that I've been telling you. We don't know at the moment, but it is highly probable that there will be further disturbances going into the weekend.
Yes. Well, I did see something in Zero Hedge. I didn't read the article, but it was about the French military saying they were going to charge. This is the heading of the article. They were going to charge Macron with treason. And then I know that Duran, whose work I follow, and I think you follow too, Alexander Mercouris has commented that the army do not like Macron and what he's done.
Yeah.
He's not popular with the army at all.
Well, there's also additional reasons for that. Macron has been incredibly arrogant, not just with the French people, but very arrogant with certain military officers, like, for example, General Villiers, who is highly decorated. He's retired now, fairly recently retired, but he is retired. But he was a French general who had the respect of all the other serving military commanders and officers at senior level, as well as throughout the ranks and front line, but also a great man of the French people, and was always very outspoken, I suppose, in that regard, that they were there to serve the French people. Now, when Macron publicly disrespected him because he had raised concerns about things like military budgets and better equipment, that type of thing, Macron disrespected him very openly and very publicly. And of course, military people, being the way they are, they don't like one of their own being humiliated in the way that Macron did. They have long memories. And that was a big mistake on the part of Emmanuel Macron, I believe.
Right. Okay. Well, my concern is, and there were reports that this had spread to the Netherlands, to Belgium, to Switzerland, and I don't know if it's still got ongoing in those places, but if I look at the ingredients in France, so you've got an extremely unpopular administration, disconnected from the populace. You've got a very large, dissatisfied and disenfranchised immigrant population with very high rates of unemployment. And then you've got a really poor and worsening economic situation and increasing authoritarian policies. Now, I could be talking about Britain. Oh, and ongoing large-scale immigration, illegal immigration, because it's not like people are being brought in for merit or to fill particular roles, but like people are being flown into Ireland, as I discussed in my interview with Aisling Aisling O'Loughlin a few weeks ago. They're being brought in by boats into the UK, across the southern border, into Texas, in the United States, being flown from Africa into Australia, all the countries that did lockdown like crazy, in all those places, right? So you got those ingredients. So to me, it looks like, well, it's only a matter of time, Jim, until it visits these shores and spreads, because I don't think this is going to quieten down.
It's not, and it is going to happen. It's just a matter of time. There will be a catalyst that will set it off. And I would cast your mind back to 2011, to the riots that occurred in London and spread very, very rapidly around the country. And they were terrified this was going to spread even further. But we've seen the reports just again today from news channels like GB News, for example, who are talking now openly about the fact that the government are trying to hide the fact. This is very interesting. GB News has said that the government are trying to hide the fact that these boats are coming in. And when they're putting Royal Navy vessels out to intercept them, take them on board, and then ferry them in that way, so that reporters and other people cannot go down to the beaches and film the boats arriving, so that Richie Sunak can say that he's successfully stopping the boats. And I posted a clip from GB News probably about 20 minutes or so before I came on the show with you, and it's gaining traction. So we've got sort of mainstream news outlets that are now exposing what is actually happening, but there is a bigger part to all of this, and of course that's the reason why they're allowing it to happen, because they could stop it.
They could stop it. And then I've asked this many times, is how come this Tory government is allowing this? This is not Tory policy. Margaret Thatcher will be turning in her grave. For this.
Well,
you and I agree. Please say so.
Oh, we certainly do. Margaret Thatcher was a true conservative. Richie Sunak is nothing like that. And I think it's an important point that you've made, Rich, because the current Conservative Party is conservative in name only. But equally, the Labour Party under Starmer and the people that are around him are anything but traditional Labour. They are completely different. And I mean, you and I have talked about the fact that I'm a bit on the right, but I've had a very, very positive relationship with many people who are left of centre. I get on like a house on fire with people from the left and the right, as long as they're moderate. And I found that what has happened with the Conservatives and the Labour parties is that they've both become almost identical. They are both corporate globalist orientated parties who have completely ditched their traditional members' wishes. They serve the World Economic Forum now, which is chaired by a German called Klaus Schwab, and they take their instructions from them. And people are waking up in their millions globally at the moment to what the World Economic Forum is really looking to do. For example, the WEF Agenda 2030 is extremely open about what they plan to do. And if you actually read it, you will realize that what's happening to France is by design. It's not by accident, because they don't want to have strong, independent nation states. They want a one world government that they lead. And the way to do that is to destroy independent sovereign nation states. And one of the best weapons that they have to do that is mass uncontrolled migration, with masses of people coming in, many of whom that don't speak the language. They are not part of the culture. They will come with absolutely no loyalty to the host country. And Macron is, of course, a member of the World Economic Forum. Richie Sunak is a member of the World Economic Forum. Joe Biden in the United States is also a member of the World Economic Forum, as is Justin Trudeau in Canada and Rutte in Holland. I mean, the list goes on and on.
And Keir Starmer in the Labour Party, yep.
Very good point. And Keir Starmer has declared his loyalty to Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. So when a general election comes, either of those parties is a vote for the World Economic Forum. More migration, higher taxes, 15-minute cities, no democracy, dystopian, anti-human controls. It's a nightmare. And until people wake up and realize that and identify whoever it is they're voting for, whatever party they're voting for no longer matters. Because if the person they're voting for is connected to the World Economic Forum, then it's World Economic Forum policies that they're going to adopt, regardless of whether they're a Conservative or a Labour person. It makes no difference anymore. They're all one and the same.
Yep. And I think there's whether it's deliberate or not, the Tory party are going to collapse at the next election because they're not doing anything that's traditionally Conservative or Tory. And then what that's going to do is pave the way for Labour to come in, and Labour are culling any of they're getting rid of the left wing elements, which includes the libertarian left wing, like Jeremy Corbyn. And then in the Tories, then the only real opposition is by the libertarian Tory MPs, like Andrew Bridgen, no longer in the Tory party. Then that will be gone. Yeah. They won't be speaking out in favour of traditional Tory values against this globalist agenda, and we're just going to have the WEF on steroids. Apart from the fact that Keir Starmer is so dull and boring, and it's just awful. It's just awful. But then that goes to your point about what they don't want are strong leaders. They want people that can be manipulated, that can be controlled. So then we have, as Tom Luongo says, I don't know, we say like Mr. Fungus or something like that. We got Fungus as a president of the United States.
Well, a fellow Scot, George Galloway, that you and I both listen to sometimes, he calls him a block of wood. You know, Keir Starmer's just like a block of wood. He's probably right. But talking about strong leaders, they're trying to put a lot of pressure on Viktor Orban in Hungary. He's the Prime Minister of Hungary. And Viktor Orban has been consistently refusing to take mass migrant quotas that the EU have dictated to him because he knows that what happened in France, and by the way, he's not just taking that policy now, he's been consistently taking that position for years because he knows the dangers of filling your country with people who are potentially terrorists, potentially criminals. You don't know what you're getting coming in on these boats or through your borders, and many of them are violent people, rapists. I mean, there's hardly a day goes by that I'm not seeing a report of a woman or a child being raped or seriously assaulted here in the United Kingdom. It's going to get worse. And there are billions of taxpayers' pounds in the United Kingdom at the moment being spent housing these illegal migrants in luxury hotels, whilst our elderly are having to face cutting back on their food because they can't afford the rising food prices or energy costs, and of course rising mortgages. But it seems that WEF Sunak can't spend enough as long as they're not British. You understand? So that's where we're going. And the American position is equally dire because their southern border is porous. It's virtually no border there. And any nation that doesn't have strong borders ceases to be a nation. And there are millions, literally millions of people pouring through that border, many of them affiliated to serious criminal organizations like MS-13 and others, very, very violent. And they are getting bust all over the United States by the Biden administration without even checking who they are. And of course, once again, Biden is following World Economic Forum policy. And let's not forget the poor Dutch farmers, Rich, because they've all been told, 3,000 of their farms have been told, you're going to have to get off your farms, places that they've farmed for generations. By the way, Holland is one of the most productive, probably as a shining example to farming around the world. And they are being told that their farms are going to be expropriated. In other words, forcibly bought or purchased for what the government wants to give them and seized. And if they resist, they've been told that the European Union will ban them from farming anywhere in the European Union member states. Wow. That's not what I call democracy.
No, and that's not a government that's out to serve people. And that's a government that's out to destroy its own populace and to deprive them of food on the grounds that farming is bad for the environment. No comment about the way that we're fueling the war in Ukraine. Apparently that's not as harmful. You know, sending armaments across the world to kill people is not as harmful to the environment as farms. Okay, now I want to push back on something about the immigration, right? Now, some of them are rapists and criminals and stuff. That goes on with any population. I think the danger is, and I interviewed the deputy leader of UKIP recently, and I shared this with her, that I did a thought exercise that supposing in Pakistan, hundreds and thousands of people from other parts of the world were to just be allowed in. People from Europe, people from Afghanistan, people from India, people from wherever, from Africa, it wouldn't work. It would destroy, the local culture, local traditions, dilute them completely. It would increase tensions. You would have struggle for resources between the host population and the new arrivals. If you do this kind of policy is designed to destroy a country's culture. If you don't have culture, you don't have religion, then you've got nothing to identify yourself with. So then become easier to manipulate and rule. So that's one point I want to say about that. And then what we've got going on is we haven't got immigration because, we've got a shortage, like what happened in the 50s. The NHS needed workers, London Transport needed bus drivers and tube drivers and stuff. So, they sent people out to India and the Caribbean to interview people, bring them in if they had the relevant experience and stuff, right? Or if you have particular skills, like Jim, you're now about to set up a really great curry house, so you want to bring in a chef from Pakistan or India, right? Because they got a particular skill. We're not talking about that. We're talking about an open door policy. Anybody come in. You don't know who's coming in. That's dangerous, and that destroys local culture, and it also sets people against each other, which makes it easier for us to rule over. Okay.
Well, I agree with both of those points. I mean, moving religion and everything else aside, because that's not really the main thing here. What we've got is the numbers of people that are coming. It's the volume. And you quite eloquently explained that. You could take any country like Pakistan, for example, the same problems will ensue.
Yeah.
So
they've all been trafficked. Who's making the money are gangsters.
Yeah, they are. They are. And the biggest gangster of all is Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum.
Yes. Well, the people behind him, he's just the face, I think. But now,
I think you might be right. I definitely think you might be right.
I'm conscious that you've got another appointment. You've been incredibly busy. I appreciate you coming back on. I want to leave on a positive note, because there are movements. There is a great awakening. People are waking up. I don't think the OPNs are going to fly. Apparently, there are no cameras in Hillingdon, Uxbridge, in Hillingdon. They've all been removed by people who've taken them down, which would just cost money for the local authority to replace, right? And there, Marine Le Pen is getting increasing popularity. There's the Reclaim and Reform parties and the Heritage Party in the UK. So there is a movement, and of course, what Orban is doing in Hungary. So there is a movement against this, and all we got to do is keep empowering that, because they ain't going to win. They ain't going to win. They'll be part of the Great Resist. Any last words, Jim, before we finish up?
Just obviously, I would encourage people to listen to your channel, Rich. You come out with some great information there. Tune in. I will be watching what's going on in France incredibly closely as we go into this particular weekend. Let's not forget the NATO meeting that's coming up shortly, and what might be happening with that. Joe Biden's coming across. There's a lot of things that are going to be going on. London's going to be an interesting place to be in, and we're just going to keep reporting as much as we can. And for those people who are in France, I'm incredibly grateful to you for making contact. A lot of people are following the channel from France at the moment that I don't know, but they're starting to find out a little bit more about what I've been doing, and I guess they're looking for information about what's happening and what other people around the world are thinking at the moment as well. So they're very welcome to do that. But yeah, thanks for that, Rich. Delighted to be back on with you, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Inshallah, we will, right? And look forward to being on. And I'll have all the links in the description below. Comments, questions, all of that business. Thank you so much, Jim. And keep filling your pockets with freedom. It's Crypto Rich and Crypto Jim signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.